let's go straight into it. There's only one place to start. City's pulsating 2-2 draw with Arsenal at the Etihad on Sunday. So City have returned to the top of the Premier League, 1 point above Liverpool in second and two clear of Arsenal in fourth. After rescuing a draw thanks to a 98th minute equaliser from John Stones. I think many were predicting a tight, low scoring game between these two, similar to the two games last season. But it turned out, like you said, to be a very entertaining and eventful, tetchy and physical match as well. What did you make of it overall? Do you think City are and Arsenal will be happy with a point? And what have you taken from the game overall?
It's really hard to sort of judge the fallout from this game yet because I don't think it's really happened. I think we're waiting on a little bit of a reaction, waiting on the Rodri news. We're waiting to see how Arsenal react to that as well. We don't know how City are going to react to that. In sort of like if you remove all the noise away, a point is never really bad against your title rivals, especially when it keeps you top of the table. I sort of do a mental tally of the big games when I look at the fixtures, and the more you get out of the way, and if you're at the top of the table still or very close, the better it is. So largely it's like the last one's out of the way now, and we're still top of the table. So for me, using that sort of as a metric of measurement, it's a decent place to be in. I do feel as a City fan, we probably could have won that if things had gone a little bit different. I was a little bit disappointed by City as well and Guardiola, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a little bit in the second half. I do feel Arsenal, despite their brilliant defence, were there for the taking, and I feel Guardiola went into full-on conservative Guardiola mode. He was far too scared of the potential of a counter-attack from absolutely no one, it turned out. And I feel like we had the wrong people in front of goal for 50 minutes of that second half. And we eventually, it's weird to say we got away with it because we probably deserved the point and balance of things, but it did feel like that at the end. But the game itself, look, the only thing I can take from it is probably an emotional victory, I would say, because Arsenal looked dead on their feet at the end, despite, getting a point away at us and defending really well. It looked like it hurt them a little bit because once again, it didn't feel like it was enough again, despite their best efforts. Maybe they don't feel that way, but that's the way it came across to me at the end of the game. And I think City looked pretty fired up and frustrated. And usually we channel that quite well, but it remains to be seen, of course, going ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the overwhelming emotions from that game, from a City perspective, I think is frustration for a number of reasons. For example, with Arsenal's equaliser, with Kyle Walker going over to the referee to have a discussion, and then he
Yeah.
wasn't given the chance to go back, and then obviously he just sort of did get back, but he wasn't able to cut out Martinelli, and he passed it to Calafiori to score a great goal, and then obviously. Mikel Arteta's been accused and criticised of the so-called dark arts and his time-wasting tactics, and that was a frustrating aspect of it as well. And then for City as well, from a fan's perspective, to see the likes of you've got Walker and Diaz and Akanji passing it in around the box, but Arsenal were more than happy for those players to end up having shots from range, because they were sitting so back and parking the bus essentially. It was, I think, yeah, you agree? It's just frustration is big emotion from that game.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but feel that the second half, um, we just didn't set up right at all. Manchester City didn't. And look, I'm not going to try and teach Guardiola how to suck eggs. He's the best in the world, probably the best who's ever done it. But there's not a single person in the world that doesn't have flaws. And I think it was really obvious to pretty much everyone. And I sort of feel slightly vindicated because a professional that I know, a professional footballer, actually texted me during it saying, I agree with what you're saying, by the way, because they were watching it getting frustrated too. And to me, the issue became having the wrong people trying to do the wrong things. Like it's sort of like it felt like it needed to invert a little bit. It became very obvious, in my opinion, within 15 minutes, Arsenal had absolutely zero intention of getting forward. Like zero. They had everyone behind the ball. They didn't even leave a token player up the pitch. There was no one. They had 10 people behind the ball. And what that left is basically City's centre backs, and we have a lot of them on the pitch usually, trying to pull the strings against the best Marshall defence probably in the world right now. A phenomenal defense that Arsenal have got. And when you need, to break down a defense like that, it often comes down to individual brilliance. If you can't, if you have to have, a little moment of magic, someone to put it in from 20 yards or someone to beat a player out wide. And it felt like so much of the ball was falling to Ruben Diaz. Kovacic, famously not a very good goal scorer, one a season at best. Usually pretty good goals when he does score, but he's not really going to get you a goal when you're desperate. And then Kyle Walker, famously not a great goal scorer either. And often Akanji as well. He felt like those guys were the ones who had the ball in front of Arsenal. And that must have been absolutely beautiful for Arteta to see. I was screaming internally for them just to switch positions. Leave Kyle Walker back because he's really fast if you want to. Let Akanji and Diaz or whatever drift into the box and let Foden and Gundogan, people like that, be outside the box, trying the little tricky 1-2s and trying to get past people or whipping crosses into the big guys alongside Haaland. He was screaming for something to be a little bit different because it felt like the tactics. And I did a sort of a rough totting up of the shots attempted by our centre backs, and it was like 15, 16 shots. Some of them were blocked, of course, but that's your tactic. You got to get a little bit lucky. And I feel like in the end, the only one who really changed things was Jack Grealish sort of forcing it, from the corner, driving at people. And I was sat there thinking, just switch it around, get Gundogan, get Foden on the box outside of on the ball outside of the box. Maybe stretch the pitch. Savinho on the left with overlapping fullbacks. Let Guardiola go outside of him. Bring Rico Lewis on, who Guardiola said is an absolute genius in the pockets, in those tight spaces. And he spent the whole week talking about the importance of Phil Foden and Rico Lewis to break down defenses like that. And for the vast majority of that game, they were nowhere to be seen other than Foden, who came on late, obviously late on in the game. It just felt like that Arsenal side just needed a challenge, and we didn't really give him it. And ultimately we got the draw. So it's not like the end of the world or anything like that. But it did feel like we were far too cautious, and I don't feel it was just me feeling that way. It felt frustrating watching City sort of bang their head against the wall willingly. But sometimes, you've got to just say, okay, well, Guardiola has something in mind, and let him crack on because he tends to know what he's doing.